This is no plutocracy, patsy political show. This is Thinking Liberty. It's Tuesday, October 26th, 2010.
He's almost out of breath.
I breathed. There.
Ah,
I cheated.
you loser. See, he was supposed to do the whole thing on one big breath and just go all the way down. He's going to start whispering at the end.
Well, I wasn't really sure where I was supposed to end, though. Like, just with the thinkingliberty.net.
Yeah, whatever's on that page.
There's not much on this page.
What's on this page? Did you even get to note upcoming guests?
We'll do that later.
Yeah, see, you're supposed to get to all that. You would run out of breath real quick.
Oh, no, I wasn't going to read everything on this page. I was just going to read the intro, which is, not actually the full intro. The actual bombast isn't even written down.
That's true.
But
he comes up with this off the top of his head every time, folks. Every single time.
It's not off the top of my head. It's more
it's off the middle of his head.
One of the top layers.
Yeah. It's off the middle of his head every single time, folks.
All right. So this is thinkingliberty.net. I'm what's my name again? Nauseating D?
Apparently it's Nauseating D for Darian. This is Darian of DarianWarden.com over here, and I'm Tennyson. Over there is Bile. And you know who's missing today? Our good friend Ryan. Every time I'm here, apparently, for the last 3 weeks, he's not going to be here. Or I'm not going to be here and he's here. He's avoiding me. I know this now.
Do you guys have like some kind of court order where you're not allowed to be in the same room or on the same radio show or something?
I don't know. I mean, I think that he just feels that I'm gaining weight and he no longer wants to be around me because I've started to put on some weight. And
that's pretty harsh.
Yes, it is. And so,
especially for Ryan.
I know. It's ironic, isn't it? But
yeah.
So I hope.
That's a relationship.
Bosco is an idler in the chat room,
okay.
So I guess we will be hearing from him.
Oh, we'll see.
Maybe he'll call in and troll us. I don't know.
He's not going to call in. He's not going to do anything.
He's supposed to be sick, so he can't be doing that.
Well, he was on Facebook today. I mean, you wouldn't just cut class, pretend you're sick to go on Facebook, would you?
Maybe.
I don't know.
I hope he calls in. Oh, we've got he says C. I can't read the screen from here for some reason.
Oh, it says C.
Yes.
Algoritmo.
Nope.
Nada.
Nope. We've got Bosco in the chat room, but this is Thinking Liberty, so let's get into the show.
Yes.
Now, this is an interactive broadcast. You already mentioned the chat room. You can go to the side of thinkingliberty.net. There's a chat function. You can chat us up in there.
You know, we have an email as well, too. You know what the email address is?
It's contact@thinkingliberty.net.
Oh, good. He memorized this whole thing. How about the Twitter? Do you know if we got a Twitter feed here?
Think N Liberty is us on Twitter.
Think N Liberty? The letter N. So Think N Liberty, all one word. All right. It's on Facebook, too?
It's on Facebook. It's there's like a phone number. So check it out.
There's like a phone. There's an actual phone number here.
It's a phone number. Some of which of the numbers are letters.
Do you know what they are?
It's
he's got to look at my screen to figure out what this thing is.
What is
you can't even see it.
919-88-NO-GOV.
There we go. So 919-88-NO-GOV or 919-886-6468. So
NOGOV.
Yeah, and if you don't really care for those phone things, you can use the Skype. We're Thinking Liberty on Skype, so you can just find us there.
All right, so what are some of the things that are going on? Well, I think this whole release of the Iraq war logs, I almost said war blogs.
Wasn't it a war blog?
I guess they were war blogs, but by WikiLeaks. Very interesting.
Yeah, so how many documents got released? There's like some big, massive number of documents that came out.
Almost 400,000.
Jeez. Who's going to read all that? You?
Oh, yeah, in my spare time. I just scan through.
He's got a lot of spare time.
Oh, yeah. But I forget what the numbers were, like 12 million words or something. I don't pay attention to that kind of stuff, but it was a lot. Big number.
Yeah.
Beyond
They released
comprehension.
a big number of things related to the Iraq War, and things that I've found out from learning a little bit about these documents here. Apparently, the military was keeping a little bit of a body count of the civilians that they killed. I thought they just said, no, we don't do body counts. And
they didn't say that.
They did. That's what they've always said. They said, we don't do body counts.
You can trust the government.
And apparently they had been keeping a bit of a body count there. Yeah. And the toll went into the tens of thousands, if not even higher than that, even to the 100,000. And that's.
Well, I saw a response from the people who do the Iraq War body count .org or something.
Yeah.
They said something like they found there are people they didn't know about who are listed in, or incidents they didn't know about that are listed in there. But for example, the numbers were definitely low in the U.S. government counts. Like, they didn't count a lot of people in Fallujah.
I'm sure
that Iraq Body Count knew had been killed during the operations, the large-scale operations there. So it's interesting, though, that they said they didn't keep count, and they did. And
it's just amazes me that they actually had this much detail on the things that they had done, and then refused to even acknowledge that they had done these kinds of things. So what would even make an organization do something like that? What kind of thing? Imagine what kind of orders you'd have to give out to have this stuff done, but say that we're not doing it. Why? What's the purpose of that? Like, think about that. You're the military. Why would you do this?
It's a lot of it is the psychological control element of it, the psyops, the propaganda war. You want to know, like, information is a big thing. There might be some kind of phrases like the information battlefield, or the battle for information, or something like that. And information is something that you want to have, but if you don't want other people to know what you're up to, you don't want that to get out. So why wouldn't they want people to know what they're up to? I mean, they're doing some bad stuff.
The easiest way to have people not find out what they're up to is simply to not keep the records, right?
Yeah, but they want to have information. They want control of information.
That the information's still valuable. They just don't want to get it out.
What's the value of this particular information, really? Like, to the military, what would you need to know the names of these people you just offed for?
Well, it's going to happen anyway. Like, it's not like they're outright blatant killers. They're still doing some amount of investigation of these events to see, was a friendly killed, or is there something so egregious that we need to look into this? And what else does government and bureaucracy do but tally numbers? So it's an easy thing to collect. It's going to go to somebody to report, and you don't have to give it to anyone. So what the hell?
Bean counters got to get paid.
That's true.
Even if the beans they're counting are bodies in this case. Now, one thing that first of all, those who are unfamiliar, the Iraq war logs were given to a number of large news organizations, and they were told not to release it until a specific time. I think Al Jazeera released it a little bit early or something. So
it was like a half an hour early, and then they had an embargo, obviously, on the data, and then I think they released it a half an hour early, and then Wiki said, do whatever.
Yeah, so like The Guardian, for instance, has like a big section, Iraq war logs, and I think one of the earlier articles, it basically sums up, details widespread abuses, torture. One of the things that I thought was just most outrageous about this was that they pretty much knew that. Well, they did. Some people knew that the Iraqi forces, the Iraqi prisons, were being accused of widespread, just outrageous abuses of detainees. Yet the U.S. knew this. The leaders knew this. They continued to have prisoners they captured turned over to these outrageous prisons where they would be tortured. And I mean, it's just there's no excuse for that, and you can see why they didn't want that information getting out.
Yeah, I suspect the reason that they bothered was, or in part overlooked it, was because what the hell else are they going to do? And from a practical aspect, they're there's 100 and some thousand of them over there. They find that some police officer or police department is abusing some random Iraqi. One, why do they care, really? Yeah, they find out, but what are they going to do about it? And two, even if they wanted to do something about it, what could they do about it? It's probably rampant, and you've got one group of guys going around, and they find out, what was one of the reports? They went into the chief of police or whatever he was. They go into his office and he's got quote unquote like torture devices with blood smeared on him still, and he's just like, well, this is how we got to get things done. And even if they were opposed to this, like truly, what could they have done? And so they're just going to hide the data. They'll document it, hide it, and that's it.
They could, take steps to not have that done, to not support these units that are doing that, to try to institute some training, to create their own, detention centers where, people aren't going to get tortured, because we know the U.S. government's great at doing that.
Yeah.
But
I think even in those cases, like, you've got certain guys who were either part of militia or previously part of the military or police officers, and that's their role. This community sees them in that role, and who else do you have to trust? Not that you can trust those guys, but logistically it just seems like a nightmare regardless of what's going on.
I mean, if your priorities are to establish control over this area and institute a regime that's friendly to your interests, and it's hard to do that, you might not ask too many questions about what they're doing. I mean, the U.S. has in the past supported regimes that use torture and all sorts of things.
Far worse than what we read in the Iraq logs.
Yes.
But I guess this is new because it's so widespread. It's on such a large level, and there's such a large U.S. commitment to it. It's not, some CIA and covert operators. The Iraq War is, one of the main things that the U.S. is doing.
This is the day-to-day.
Will the cover-up of this information actually become the story? Or will the story just be, the outrages, which are, of course, their own story?
What kind of cover-up has there been, if any?
I mean, none of this stuff was revealed before, so it seems like... And they kept the record, so they must have been keeping it covered.
Oh, you mean in that regard? I think,
right.
And not going forward, you mean?
Right.
Trying to... Because they keep... the Defense Department, using the Espionage Act, wants to have Julian Assange and WikiLeaks return, whatever the hell that is, return the data as if, everything's on file, physical file somewhere.
He was just handed like a giant stack of file folders. Maybe he has it all on 3.5 floppy disks.
Maybe. Oh, well, that's the language. I mean, it's what the Espionage Act is from 1917, I think.
Who knows?
Or 1913 or whatever it was. I mean,
gotta keep the Hun out of our files, yo.
Yeah. Well, that's the language they use. They use completely outdated language, so it says that it needs to be returned.
This reminds me of an episode of Foster's Home for Imaginary Friends. I don't know if anybody's watched that cartoon, but I'm a constant cartoon watcher, try to keep up with what the kids are watching these days. And that was a few years ago, but Cartoon Network released this show called Foster's Home for Imaginary Friends. And the headmaster, or the steward of the Foster's Home, was a giant rabbit. He's an imaginary friend of the actual owner, who's Madame Foster. And so what happened is he's doing this silly song and dance thing. He's this stodgy, uptight type of fellow who's, never caught doing anything silly. But, for his imaginary, for the person who imagined him, he will do these silly, crazy things. And so someone secretly videotaped him doing these things and then put the video up online on YouTube, and it got millions and millions of hits. It wasn't called YouTube, but it was online. And then they're like, he's like, well, he needs to get this stuff down. It's like, how can I stop this? And so he starts plugging out TVs and plugging out computers, and they're like telling him that's not going to stop it. He goes outside and it's still everywhere. It's like, I can't plug all these things out.
I was thinking that Julian Assange, as much trouble as this man is in, as like a comical relief type of thing, he should just go and print out a bunch of stuff and then
just mail it
to the White House or something. Be like, here, I'm turning it in. I can't guarantee that other people don't have this, but
they could just email them the link. That'd be returning the data.
So the little kid told him, like, it's on the internet now. What do you can? He's like, where is this net? Wherever it is, I'll just take it down. It's like, I'll catch it. He thinks that he can catch them, and they're telling him, no, it's not a kind of net that you can actually. And it's like he just doesn't understand. He's way too old and antiquated, and that's exactly the kind of thing that they're dealing with
now,
here.
What are you talking about? The internet is a large box in Ohio.
There you go.
Before we get too far, I want to note that our chat room user,
Come on,
Darian
I'm just
can't-
knocking things
Darian
over.
can't
I
get
just
things
wrecking the
straight
house.
here, you know? He's just a disaster. Everything's
A roving epicenter of disaster.
okay. That works.
That's what William Grigg called the Bush administration, I believe. But
Oh boy.
I want to point out that user Agarismo in the chat said, "Think of all the jobs they created in the torture implement industry, though."
Well, there you go.
But
Can't beat
are
that
they
argument.
fully employed? I think they're underemployed as torturers because I think they're more employed as civils, quote unquote, civil servants.
Well, I guess other people will get their chance to torture. You know, you
They
sign up for the.
They don't have unemployment problems.
You sign up for them. You know, the recruiters promise you a chance to torture, and then they could just say anything they want. It turns out legally, and you might not actually get your chance to torture. You might end up, serving on the domestic
Does Paul
front.
Krugman support torture stimulation?
Good.
I mean, if it gets the economy going,
The hell, he wants to double it. If anything, just double it.
They need a bailout is the next song. I guess they get bailouts in the form of
Whips.
U.S. funding all the time. So now I want to take this over to the part of the show where we diss other media agencies. There's a actual generator that lampoons the New York Times inability to use the word torture
Generator?
in describing this. Yeah, it's like an automatic thing. You press in. I guess it doesn't really do much. It's just you click a mouse key or click a button with your mouse, and it says it just comes up with different headlines or different descriptions for what was going on in these Iraqi prisons.
Okay.
I think I saw it on Glenn Greenwald posted something on it. I think it was on Boing Boing or something. I don't know. You with your MacBook there can check that out.
Well, you with your iPhone over there, you could go check that out.
I could check it out, but I will note that Tennyson has iPhone and MacBook running at the same time while there's a giant TV screen in front of him. Bile actually has 3 screens around him.
Yeah.
I have an iPhone which is turned off.
Bile,
it's not turned off.
Don't forget my Android Nexus 1.
Bile
too.
has a Mac Mini over there, so there we go.
So we
I have
get
an
technology.
excuse. It was given to me.
There we go. And it's working out great.
All right, so
Well,
Boss,
except for when I tried to upgrade it and it completely shit the bed.
So I figured you were gonna get the new one because you really can do the upgrade with the hard drive in the new one.
It's not a hard drive upgrade. I tried to upgrade the CPU in it, and I ordered it. It worked fine in another machine. I put it in the Mac Mini, and vertical lines just started to appear. It sort of booted, but really didn't, and I had to send it back.
That was the new Mac Mini?
No, it was the current Mac Mini with an upgraded CPU.
Oh no, I mean get the new Mac Mini.
Why would I spend $700 to $900 or $1,000 when I have one that was given to me for basically for free, and does everything I need?
Because it'd be faster and it might give you more zeros. I don't know.
You're such a consumerist.
Get way too many ones. You need more zeros. That's why we buy new stuff all the time.
So we've got some comments going on in the chat room here.
No, we
Bosco,
don't. Oh.
he says, "What the shit is a mouse key?" I told you, it's a button that you click with your mouse. So take that.
Oh, you mean it's the mouse button?
No, it's when it says okay, you go and the thing that you click on with the mouse. He's just so confused.
It sounds like the thing you click on.
There are
with your
those
mouse.
mice, those gaming mice that have 50 million.
You saw that
buttons on them.
the one that they just released. It's got the 15 buttons on the side here, and they
Crazy
had
things on the
they had it
rollers
at
and
Comic-Con. The people were playing New Civilization 5 or something, and they had these 15 button mice on the side here with regular 3 buttons in the front and other buttons on the side you can squeeze in or something.
It's just un-American.
I haven't played Civilization since it was number 2.
Oh.
So
you took a number 2 with Civilization, but now number 5.
What is taking a number 5? That just sounds horrendous.
We will tell you during break.
Now, Bosco also posted. It is a Boing Boing thing that it's on Boing Boing is where this thing we're talking about is.
Experience stressful. What is that?
It says evidence
Disintermediation
suggests
demands.
Evidence suggests distressing interrogation assessments. It's on boingboing.net. So
Orlog show
you'll find it there.
unusual physical inspections. Yeah, we're reading things from the chat room, which people in the chat room, if they're listening to the show, already know that we're doing. So, evidence suggests distressing toenail solicitations. Okay.
Yeah, that sounds pretty terrible. Now, if you're just joining us, this is thinkingliberty.net on our October 26th broadcast. We don't have a live guest, however, we're going to have a recorded interview with Wally Conger played at the end. How long is that interview, by the way?
46 minutes.
How was it? I mean, I wasn't here for it, so
you'll find out.
Yeah, I mean, he was in California at the time, and I was in California at the time, but I never met him. So,
wow,
California is a big place.
That's what I've learned. Apparently, it's not just a small town in New Jersey. No, it's actually a whole state.
There's a town in Pennsylvania called Indiana, and there's a town in Pennsylvania called Jersey Shore.
There must be interesting people.
I'm not kidding. There's actually a sign for that on the highway.
Antonio got up just to beat his cats, and then
he's gonna smack Tennyson in the face with a cat.
No, the cat is whining at the door because Lori's not around. And
is that what happened?
Yes, he likes to go outside. We have a harness for him. We've taken him outside to try to walk.
You have a harness for the cat?
Yes, we have a harness for him.
Oh, that's adorable.
If you open the door, he will run out, run down the steps, and just kind of flop there, and then think that the next door neighbor's door is our door, and then try to get in.
He doesn't even know his own door?
The reason I went after him right now was because he was clawing at the carpet.
Oh, okay. He doesn't even know his own door? How could he confuse the scent?
It's a cat. I don't know.
He can't confuse that scent.
Obviously he can.
I think
he's retarded.
I think he just wants to get into the neighbor's place.
It's possible, but I'm betting that he's retarded.
Okay, there's also that possibility.
All right, we're gonna tell Laura that you were speaking unkindly of the cat.
Laura's gonna have to listen to the recording here.
Oh, right, now I just want to there are two awesome ones just came up in the chat here. Reports indicate electric sad time, and leaked war logs reveal that for which there is no emoticon.
And then he put a smiley face emoticon.
So, I mean, we're not necessarily laughing at the misfortune of others. We're laughing at the cowardice of others to report on that misfortune when they call themselves or are called the nation's paper of record or some such BS or all the news that's fit to print. Whatever they are, they got to step it up. So, there you go.
I'm sure they will do better if you buy some more subscriptions.
Okay. So I guess that's the government solution, or any bureaucracy. If they're failing, it's because they need more money,
and they will get it.
More money.
Well, someone please think of the bureaucrats.
So what else is going on?
Actually, so I guess we're just going to take a break around 8:45 because that'll be about halfway through. And
we're going to come back for the end of the show, or?
We'll take a break around then. We'll come back in, and then we'll go straight into Wally Conger's interview.
All right. So we're not going to come back after the interview.
No.
All right.
So we'll play Wally around 9:15.
Okay.
All
right. We didn't figure this out before the show. For some reason, it's just more interesting to make it participatory.
Let's just do it right here on the air where everybody knows this is how we actually make decisions here. We're just like, okay, let's just do that. And we've done it.
This show is totally haphazard.
Exactly. Except for Bile over there. Because he's...
I don't know. I did screw up the recording, what was it, 2 weeks ago?
Yeah.
But I've remedied that. Now it records every goddamn thing that I do.
All right.
So I just got to remember to delete it so it doesn't fill up the hard drive.
That's okay.
So there's just a giant microphone in his living room that records everything that's said in
that
there.
would make the show much easier than having to
shove
microphones into all your faces.
You could fill all the other lost data in with just doing that, the backup recording with the boom mics that are above us. But no. So he's going to play Richard Nixon here, and he's going to delete those recordings.
There's some really cool microphones. Speaking of microphones. Just the other day, I saw something on Gizmodo or one of those tech websites where it was this large circular. It was this disc of microphones, these tiny microphones, and using a computer back end would be able to pinpoint out of a whole crowd a particular individual by processing each of the signals that came in from all these microphones, and it was like a equidistance, sort of like just a burst pattern, so like maybe 10 in a circle, and then every couple centimeters out from there. So there was like hundreds of mics on this thing.
Wow.
And you could just set it up in a room and then pick up anyone from the crowd, and it will automatically.
How much did that cost?
A lot.
All right, see if you can get that.
All right.
Sure.
I guess this would be a good time to bring up the donations tab on thinkingliberty.net.
Speaking of $10,000 microphones,
Oh. we got what now?
We got a donations tab.
There's
on
a whole
Thinking
tab
Liberty.
for it.
there's a whole tab for soliciting money from our listeners.
All right, folks, pick up that tab over there.
In the hope that they will help fund this show,
All right.
because it costs us money on
A regular basis.
advertising and all kinds of stuff.
Yeah.
All right, so why don't we talk about voting? You know, there's an election coming up. People are going to be talking about voting. I'm seeing like ads that you got to get out and vote, and all sorts of crap like
That's exactly how they're going to sound when you're thinking about those ads too.
like South Park. Get
You
out and vote.
You sound like
Let our
you sound like
voices be
Mr.
heard.
Jefferson. Honestly, that's what you sound like.
All right,
You
so
don't even know what I'm talking about.
there's a show called The Jeffersons. Is that what you're talking about?
No, on South Park, it was a made-up
Mr.
name for
Jefferson?
Michael Jackson and his
Michael
family.
Jackson. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Now I remember that one.
Now you remember.
So, voting. What do you guys think of this?
Voting. Voting. Really?
Voting in
Seriously?
general, local issue voting, I think is actually useful. Just about everything else is not.
It's like if you really, really want to be angry at your neighbors, the local voting, that's the way to go. And, I mean, you have a really good chance of actually getting things done on the local level, though. So.
Issue votes.
Yeah, so if there's
In
like,
particular, I think issue
you know, like,
votes have a real...
we're going to fund the recreation center again for this next year, the tune of about, $40,000. And you could vote yes or no on this. And, well, I think I'll vote no. And it's as simple as that. It will pass if nobody votes. So it seems to be in your interest to vote.
I like to also note that Tennyson has the head mic today, but he's also like holding a regular mic
It's
as if
here.
a totem.
It's not on. It's not plugged in.
Yeah.
But
Double mic.
Yeah.
stereo
Yeah.
Tennyson.
Yeah, I just feel like, it's like a wand, or like a sword handle.
Like the
It's a
PlayStation
phallus.
Move.
Yeah, like the Move,
Like
or
a phallus.
Well, no, like a phallus, but the PlayStation Move one is exactly like the Hitachi vibrators. Have you seen those? The really, really popular vibrators.
No, I haven't. I'm
No.
not familiar with these vibrators.
I'll show you the vibrator.
Okay, we'll see vibrators
Yeah.
while we go on break.
Yeah.
Well, my perspective on voting is that usually it's best not to do it. A lot of times, even on local issues, you're not gonna have like a clear libertarian path. Sometimes it will be, but a lot of times it's just something like, okay, do you want to have more tax money going to this bureaucratic system, or do you want the bureaucrats in charge of that system to make up for a funding shortfall by, cutting services to people who are forced to use that system? And, sometimes it's not worth even weighing in on that question. I look at a non-vote as not necessarily a refusal, but a showing of some form of discontent that
See,
you're not.
It is for you, but from everyone else's perspective, it's not. They just don't see it.
Well, they see that I don't care about the system, and in a sense, that's
Who
right.
sees this?
Who sees that?
Nobody knows you.
People who see that there hasn't been a vote when there could have been a vote.
What?
Well, this person doesn't care.
Who?
Yeah, the only people that see that are politicians, and
Yeah.
they don't care.
The politicians already know there's going to be like a 30% turnout anyway. It's like, who are you? Out of 1 million people, who are you?
Let's make it 29% turnout.
You're not going to be 1%. You're you.
The problem is
You're
that
nobody.
Well, see what I'm saying is that
if no one
elections.
votes, someone still gets into office.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then the
Or
system
someone
looks
stays in
even more
office.
illegitimate because their whole system is to say that is based on the legitimizing effect of elections, and if the less participation there is in elections, the more they look bad. And,
Is that really what they care about, or do they really just care
well,
about
they care
getting
about
power?
looking like they have a legitimate
They care, but I
method
think
of power.
relatively speaking, there are so few of those who are not voting for principle, that it doesn't matter. Like, just in those towns where literally no one came out to vote, they still had governments the next
Exactly.
day, and the politicians look like smacked asses for one day because it made national news. But I think really the voters tend to look more like the smacked asses than the politicians. The politicians are like, oh, we support voting. We think it's your civic duty.
Yes.
And then
they really want you to vote.
And then they spin that to make their own constituents look bad, and it doesn't really harm them. That's what I mean. Like, statistically speaking, voting or not voting makes no difference, except for other people who either know that you voted or not voted. The only thing that can make any difference whatsoever is local issues where you can say, yes, vote to steal my money, or no, don't steal my money. The ones that you mentioned where there's no clear, I mean, you're kind of screwed. You can just not vote, but I guess it really doesn't matter one way or the other. And then when you have there's the whole third party getting screwed by the Democrats and Republicans thing. So theoretically, depending on the state, if you get like 2%, if your goal is to cause more strife in the political system, another party gaining prominence could theoretically do that. And I guess in some states where it's not like 15% of the registered voters or whoever votes or whatever, then you could theoretically, make it easier for the Greens or the Libertarians or the Constitutionalists or whatever the hell they are to cause more trouble to the D's and R's. And I like the idea, not enough to like go out and vote for every single election and vote for the third parties. But if I happen to be in the area, I'd rather throw my vote behind a Libertarian in an attempt to push up their numbers a little bit than to vote.
I'd rather
not vote for any of them.
I'd rather use
if I'm there.
You'd rather use force?
Yes. I'd rather use my minuscule influence on the electoral system to not give support to anybody. And I think what you touched upon there, it's important that your vote doesn't matter, but what you say about your vote does matter, how it influences people around you. And that's why I think you do have to talk about it, why you don't vote if people bring it up. Don't just say, I don't vote because I don't give a shit. I mean, okay, there are certain aspects of the system that I don't give a shit about, but the system is going to give a shit about me. So the way I try to relate to it is to, not lend my minuscule endorsement to any particular aspect of its working and to work around the system. Yeah. So you have to get the message out there. But
I don't disagree with that. I think the biggest problem with that argument that some people make as their sole argument is that, taken logically, then you also have to exclude yourself from other things that are also, provided through force, roads, taxation, all those things. And what would you do, for instance? I mean, in Australia, there's laws that you have to vote. So how would it be different? Like if the case was that if you didn't vote, you'd be fined. How would that change? How do you think that would change your opinion? Because in some places in the world that is the case. Because a lot of times the argument is, well, I don't have to participate in voting, but I have to use the roads to have a normal life.
Well, I think there's two things there. One, I don't really know how strictly these voting laws are enforced. If it was actually vote or die, then I would either vote or shoot someone. I don't know. It depends on the situation. But
P. Diddy is going to force you to vote.
Oh yeah, I'm thinking of the South Park show though. What I think about voting is essentially exactly what Wendy McElroy, however she pronounces her name. Is it McElroy or is it McElroy? I've never heard her actually say her own name. But anyway, she gave a really good speech a couple of years ago. It was called "Don't Vote," essentially, or "Direct action is superior to voting." She gives a talk on this topic in lots of different ways. And she's saying that politicians of all stripes, left or right, Republican, Democrat, no matter what they are, they always have this huge thing of get out the vote. Go out and vote. It's the biggest thing to do. It's your civic duty. We want you to vote. We don't care who you vote for. We want you to vote. Vote. Go out and vote. And she says, why? Why would anyone ask? Why would a rock-ribbed Republican go out and tell you to vote if your vote is inevitably going to go for someone who's not another Republican? So they're still going to go out and tell you vote. Or the other way around, the Democrats would tell you to go out and vote, even if you're going to vote Republican. Why would they tell you? Wouldn't they, in their own self-interest, tell you just to stay home, not vote at all? Wouldn't that be better for them? And she says that it's likened to the way that, churches have commercials and says like, go out and find a place of worship. It doesn't really matter where you go. Just find a place for you to go worship. And she says, well, if people think that voting is a mark of freedom, and so, like, they're just celebrating how free America is, and say, like, this is part of our freedom, our franchise. This is what you need to do, because this is what free people do. And she questions, well, that's not true. And that freedom is not marked by the vote, because almost all tyrannies have votes. So places like Iraq under Saddam Hussein, or North Korea, or the Soviet Union, or Cuba, they all have votes. Not just regular votes, they have mandatory votes. They need you to vote. They want you to vote. And you think these tyrannical countries have mandatory voting, is voting really the mark, or any kind of voting is voting really the mark of a free society and free people?
But we have open elections where anybody can participate.
They say that they have open elections as well. I mean, they said that other parties were there, but other parties agreed with the great leader so much that they've decided simply to not run, or they've thrown their support to the great leader at the end anyway. And that's how the party will run. And just the reason that these tyrannical countries, people in free countries generally see why the people in tyrannical countries, leaders there, want votes to be taken, want votes to be had, because it confers some legitimacy upon them. They say, well, yes, that is people have chosen, they have spoken, it is their voice. And if you don't agree with anything that's being done in the system, whether you're in a tyrannical country or a semi-tyrannical country, then you really shouldn't vote. And I think that, I'm fine. I'm not going to do any more of this. I'm not going to go out and give my vote to anybody. I don't endorse anything that they're doing, and I'm not going to endorse anything that they will eventually do, even though they said that they're not going to do it, or the other way around. So I'm done. I'm pretty much done.
I think, speaking practically, it really doesn't frickin' matter.
Exactly.
Because there are so few...
individually?
There's so few individual... But I'm talking about, the whole conversation. It really doesn't matter.
It matters to our hordes of listeners who are hanging on our every
heard
word.
This stupid argument a bazillion frickin' times. I mean, I look at it statistically, and statistically, the 2 minutes it takes to vote on whether or not the local fire department gets a new truck has a little bit of merit. Because
what about all the time you have to calculate on which way you should vote?
That takes a half a second. If you're a libertarian, why would choosing more taxation or less taxation, that should be an easy one. And there are often in small towns lots of, maybe not lots, but a couple issue votes on a ballot that are that straightforward. For instance, when I was younger, maybe 19 or so, I was home from college or something, and they had a local vote for. So New Jersey has this thing called the farm preservation. A lot of states have this, probably all of them. Basically, what they do is the state floats bonds or whatnot. They get some money, and then they buy up farmland, and say, well, this land, at least the way it worked in southern New Jersey, was the land would in effect be purchased from a farmer, from the state government. The farmer could keep and continue to use it, but only if they farmed. And for a lot of people, that sounds great. They want to keep their small farms. The thing is, though, it was actually a ploy by local bureaucrats working with their investment or contractor buddies. They would buy up these farmers' lands who couldn't afford to pay the property taxes on their land anymore. They would wait a couple years. The farmer would be incapable. He's in his 60s or 70s, just can't do it anymore by himself and can't afford to hire anyone. He would stop farming the land. The state or county or whatever responsible would come in and say, oh, you're not farming your land. You owe us all the back taxes on this. They can't pay the back taxes, and suddenly the town gets all this property for nothing, basically. And now it's divvied up and sold to the local corrupt bureaucrat's buddy who builds houses on it. And my dad is a small business owner. He knew the ploy. He told all his customers about how it actually worked in practice. We went out and voted against it. It ended up passing, but you're talking about, a couple percentage, meaning dozens of people swayed one way or the other. And by being a figurehead in the community, he was able to convince a couple dozen people. And if he could have, of course it still passed, but I know in other areas where that has, that hasn't occurred, or it's been even a very close margin. So I think, statistically speaking, in those cases, it is worth the couple minutes it takes, especially if you're a business owner, or you're because there's a lot of times they'll pass taxes that will only affect people, say, in the main town and not on the outskirts of town. So to take advantage of those kind of things, just like the federal government does, or state governments, pit people against each other. And if you can minimize that damage that is done, I think that's certainly worthy goal. Even if you don't vote yourself, advocating that other people who will vote to vote against these things, which is sort of voting by proxy, has merit.
Okay, Bosco is saying that your dad should have just voted 6 times. I don't know if that's how things worked in town, but maybe. I think in that case,
work? What do you what's the libertarian answer to that?
What, multiple voting?
Yeah, if you could get away with multiple voting, but you know that it's going to result in some tax increase not happening, would you do it, or would you not care if someone did do it?
I don't think I would. I'm
wondering.
I certainly wouldn't turn someone in.
I'm wondering whether it's actually
I would do it,
subject to any kind of libertarian ethical analysis there. So, is it?
Isn't everything?
Not really, but I don't know. Maybe.
Well, what Bile's talking about does sound like a worthwhile thing to do. Unfortunately, if you don't know as much about that issue as your dad apparently did, you might think, okay, well, we could have this set up where people don't have to pay taxes, on their farms. All right, less taxes. Good. Sounds good to me. And then, once you actually get the full story, that what you just did is not a good thing. So that's why you have to be informed. So once again, I think what you're saying, though, in that specific case is, a point where I would vote. Like, for example, the initiative in California to
Prop 19
decriminalize marijuana.
Yeah,
I mean, I would vote.
I'd vote for that.
I've noticed a lot of springing up recently on Facebook. I saw a bunch of people who claim to be libertarians. I friended them, and I assume that they friended me because
you've got so many people that you know.
What's that?
Because you've got so many people.
Because you're a freaking celebrity. You're like in New York Times.
But
Didn't you? Your question to Obama got like.
Yeah, it was on the elevator.
Dude.
We'll have to talk about that later.
But in any case, so these people, I'm assuming, are libertarian. They appear libertarian-minded, and they've got all these points as to why people should vote against Prop 19. And it was kind of interesting. There seems like, I guess, they're looking at it
because the taxation reason.
Not the taxation was part of it.
That's a silly
They said
one.
that, for instance, it left a lot of control up to the local communities.
Yeah, that's one of the points.
And they're afraid that the police will just do whatever they want anyway. Then again, I think a counter argument would say, well, sure, but in San Francisco maybe they don't care, and so maybe people will move out of these rinky-dink towns where they are oppressive. Like, at least it gives more competition in the realm of policing of marijuana. And also they said that, well, it doesn't technically decriminalize it fully. It's only up to an ounce, I think it was.
Yeah.
And
it seems like making arguments against Prop 19 is basically going for the status quo. That's my issue.
Yeah,
with that.
they want to see like a better bill.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen the person who I don't know if he authored the bill or not. When I was at Libertopia, because this was a big thing there, and I asked him about the tax and control, because that's what the billboard says, Prop 19, tax and control, legalize marijuana or something like that. But the tax and control thing is what really stood out for me, and I'm wondering, like, well, I mean, I've got issues with the tax and controlling. He's like, yeah, I know about the issues of tax and controlling. It says that the idea essentially is that the bill really specifies that the tax and control is to be done at the local level and has to be done according to whatever things have already been outlined by the locality. And most localities simply don't have any kind of infrastructure at all. They don't have anything written up for taxing or controlling it. So it'll just be legal with no taxes and no control at all. It'll just be free and legal. And that's what people are working on. A place like San Francisco, on the other hand, or a place like even Los Angeles itself, probably will have some things in place. So those places, it might backfire, but not by very much. Because I think that taxation, even though it is theft, is probably a lot better than kidnapping and almost inevitable murder or rape.
Yeah,
So,
I mean that's the way I look at it. You have. I'd rather there be taxation and the occasional DEA raid or occasional local authority that doesn't obey the law than the system where it is now, where thousands of people who aren't harming anyone get pulled out of their homes, thrown in a cell, paramilitary police raids, and all the other great stuff about marijuana criminalization and prohibition of desired goods and services in general. But I mean, the thing is, yeah, I would go and vote for it, but writing up these bills is not my role as an anarchist. My role as an anarchist is to undermine the laws, support people who break the law, and just create a more favorable atmosphere for building liberty from the ground up.
Indeed. So,
before we get into our break here, I just want to mention when I was talking about non-voting as a just to as a means of not supporting the system. You mentioned okay, we'll use roads and these other infrastructures. I mean, to me that's a different thing because just using a road is just it's walking on it. You're putting it to your own use. Voting, it's read as an endorsement. So there's a fine line there, but I think you could draw a distinction.
Yeah, it's the difference between actively killing and preventing death. So it seems like, voting is the active killing, if you're going to use that analogy. It actually is doing it. While the other one, walking on the road is simply not preventing anything. You can't help it, really.
I mean, it doesn't support the state when you use a road anyway, because you're going to use it for whatever purpose.
Well, I mean, your microscopic wear on it might become some sort of excuse, or your use of the road. Say, now we need more funding for the road.
I mean, you're using the road, generally speaking, when you mean you...
What if you don't pay the taxes?
Well, but who doesn't buy gasoline?
I don't.
You never use public transportation?
Is that what that is?
You're paying NJ Transit to get on the bus to come here. Some of that money goes to gasoline.
Oh, I thought they got tax-free gas.
I somehow doubt that.
Oh, I figured it's all government. They wouldn't have to pay the taxes to themselves.
I thought you traveled everywhere by flying machine,
not yet,
or jetpack or something.
DeLorean?
Do you pay taxes on that?
I fly everywhere via Love Machine, and it don't work for nobody but me.
All right. So on that note, we're gonna head into break. Stay tuned because we're gonna have zombies, we're gonna have conferences, and we're gonna have bombast.
And Wally Conger too.
And Wally Conger, an interview.
Can't leave Wally.
It's gonna be awesome. ThinkingLiberty.net.
Super.
And we are back on ThinkingLiberty.net, the anarcho podcast of the choice that you listen to right now.
Could you have mangled that any better?
Well, it's not the anarcho podcast of choice,
Yes,
except in the choice of our listeners to listen
Yes.
to it right now.
Just say it.
ThinkingLiberty.net, your anarcho podcast of choice.
Exactly. And say it in that voice every time.
Okay. Now, I just want to point out that as we were talking about elections earlier, there's an entire issue of
can't even
Alliance
keep
Journal
that up.
is devoted to the question of voting and elections from a left libertarian standpoint. So you can check out Alliance Journal. There's a lot of, you can download them all from libertyactivism.info.
Libertyactivism.info.
So head on over there, download that. But let's talk about zombies.
A what now?
Zombies. You know those
All right,
those things that
yes,
like walk
zombies,
around and
something I
stuff?
want to say about zombies. Now, I wrote a little diary entry about this, but let me see if I can find the exact words that I wrote. Keep going.
Well, there's a lot of zombies around now because it's Halloween time, and I just like I'm not sure where the science is behind these guys. Like,
It depends on the kind of zombie that you're talking about.
Yeah, you
Okay.
need to be specific about it.
all right,
These
like,
two classify zombies over here.
like, all right, so like, I don't know, like, say Dawn of the Dead,
Athletic
like,
zombie.
they bite you. I guess you catch a disease that
Which
makes
Dawn
you a
of the Dead?
zombie.
Yeah.
I guess the
Romero
the
one?
remake.
I'm more familiar with the modern run. I have seen the original, so
The remake fell apart after the middle. I mean, after just before the middle, and then I don't know what they were doing. But the beginning, the opening from all that was very good. I really enjoyed that one.
I think the new one was. I mean, it definitely had its downside too. But I think to kind of go in bringing back the genre, I think they did a pretty decent job.
Absolutely. What do you think about the athletic zombies, though?
I don't. They're not physically possible.
Right. Well,
Yeah.
then zombies aren't physically possible.
Well, I mean, if you want to live in a world where they are, let's pretend that we're in that world, right? So you've got decaying bodies.
Right.
I don't understand how the tendons can all be in line.
Well, I figure that there's something happening before they're totally decaying. Like, they're going to eventually die out, like in 28 days later or 28
Ooh,
weeks
so
later.
you got to be careful though, because 28 days later is kind of like is it
It's-
a zombie
it's
movie?
certainly-
Is it not?
yeah,
you got to pick the camp
It's
you're in.
on the border. It's on the border, but I think that there's some kind of weird thing, this rage thing that affected them that made them a little bit strange. And we're not talking about that stupid band either. But they get they're a little stronger, and so this thing has eliminated their minds. They become stronger. They're nothing but pure muscle and limbic brain or whatever it is, and it just wilds them out.
all right. Why don't
Eventually
zombies
they do
attack
die.
each other? Why don't they attack each other?
There's
Like,
no feed there. I mean, just like
do they want only warm like brains that aren't decayed? What?
I don't know.
Brains,
Well, brains didn't
isn't-
come in.
Isn't consistent.
Yeah.
You got to get consistent. Like, go back to the early zombie movies, like White Zombie with Bela Lugosi. Those zombies.
I haven't seen that one.
Didn't they just want flesh?
I have it
No,
if you want it.
these zombies are, and this is where the band got its name. But those zombies are traditional Caribbean zombies. They are
the
just
voodoo zombies.
voodoo zombies. They're
Yes.
people under the control of like a witch doctor or
Right.
whatever type of deal. Then later you get into like the Romero zombies, which are really unexplained. You don't know why they're that way. In the first movie, they talk about
speculate
they
about
speculate about a
satellite
like
crashing or
yes, an asteroid or a satellite, something from outer space, causing it. I think in the in Dawn of the Dead, I think they might refer to it as virus.
Yeah.
Well, each
And then I forget
section.
what they did in Day of the Dead, but they just kind of allude to things. There's no specific, and they don't eat brains. That's Return of the Living Dead, and it has nothing to do with Romero. And those guys eat brains. The Romero zombies just eat people,
Leave flash. That's
Yeah,
it.
they crave the flesh of the living, or something.
and to just kill them. And so it really depends on what kind of zombie. 28 days later, they're not really zombies; they're infected, and
They're just murdering things. It seems
yeah, they
like.
just go apeshit.
berserk and kill things.
So we've got some quotes there in the chat room. I don't know if you want to read them or not, but
Consistency is the hobgoblin of small minds.
Consistency is the
Quotes prove
hobgoblin
nothing.
of bile.
What?
all right. So I guess maybe that whole you don't know where they come from or what's up with them is like part of the
scare.
The scare,
Oh,
like
yeah.
Those
maybe
are
it's
the better
the social
movies.
commentary that like there's just craziness and you don't know what's up with it. I don't know.
I prefer the Romero zombies.
Is the social commentary something about anti-communism or communism? I'm not really sure what it is.
What?
Isn't everything about communism in the end?
I suppose. I mean,
Eventually, it all trickles down to that.
it's a communist conspiracy, like the Birchers said. But anyway, I was thinking about the diary entry that I wrote on October 20th. I said, I dreamt I was in a world inhabited by zombies, but I kept trying to make friends with them. That was it.
Well, in Romero
That's one
zombie
approach.
movies, you
Yeah.
could.
Well, yeah, Day of the Dead.
Well, and other ones.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the thing. Like, it seems like in zombie
Land of the
movies,
Dead.
you're always trying to like kill the zombies. Like, can't you like find a cure for this condition? I mean, it's like I don't know.
I mean, like an
If they're
Omega Man?
undead, what's the cure for undead? Being dead?
To be undead.
To be
yeah, that's
dead.
dead. That's shooting them in the head or severing their.
That is, the cure is to actually make them dead. The dead that they were supposed to be.
So apparently, Dawn of the Dead about consumerism. The new Fallout game has a strong anti-status undertone to it.
That's what
I was
I've
very
heard.
impressed. Those are actually two different comments. I just read them as if they're one.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, in Dawn of the Dead, yeah, they're in the mall. You know, they're talking like there's racism. There's like rednecks. I don't know. There's stuff
Wow.
in that. I'm talking about the original.
Yeah, the original is certainly higher brow in that regard.
Yeah, like screw hanging out at the mall. I mean, we got a world to save here. What's happening?
Well, all of Romero's movies are meant to be like commentaries of the time. You know, Night of the Living Dead had the. I think it's credited for having the first black
Black.
lead
Yeah.
role
Yeah.
or semi-lead role.
Didn't he still get killed?
I think
He did.
Everyone dies.
Yeah.
Wait, that's the black and white.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
Mhm.
the-
Yeah, he got shot at the end, right?
Yeah, you think he's gonna make it, and then
I saw
Yeah,
it
it
movie
looked
a
like he
long
was going to
time
make
ago.
it, and then
yeah.
Well,
all I
the
remember
sheriff
is
shot him too, so it's.
Yeah.
I almost got the sense that the sheriff just wasn't even going to question whether he was a zombie or not because he could shoot a black guy and then
That
get away
happens
with
in a
it.
lot of zombie movies. That better safe than sorry. They just shoot everybody or burn everybody or,
Yeah.
or whatnot.
Which,
But, I mean,
which
he
if you
was in a
want-
house, and this was in the era of slow zombies, so he was obviously not that much of a threat. What happened to like zombies becoming fast anyway? Sorry, were you gonna say something?
something.
I
about a
was, but I don't. I forgot what I was going to say. But
fast
zombies becoming fast.
The
That's
fast zombie thing, I think, is just the cultural change with
Right.
regards to like action
they're,
movies. Like
they're
people
much
aren't
more
into-
frightening though. Like
They are.
they're effective in that nature. Like I know I can outrun a Romero zombie, but when it comes down to like the remake and let's say just throw 20 Days Later in there,
Yeah.
just no way, no way. And then we saw like a remake of Day of the Dead, and then they're scaling walls now.
Yeah, those. Well, Romero started making it so that the zombies had more frontal lobe than they originally let on, and so by Land of the Dead, well, by Day of the Dead, you can see that, Bub is, he's got consciousness, and in Land of the Dead, you can see that they're mimicking their old behaviors and take it even further.
But you also see that in Day of the Dead too, because they're not Dawn of the Dead, because they're
Well,
going to the mall, like they're frequenting things that they would have done if they weren't.
Yeah, but they don't
undead.
point it out as much in
And-
that movie.
and
They
in-
focus
in,
on it in the third.
They're not pointing it out, but I think once you start to watch the entire
They're gonna
collection,
keep
you
going
start to
here.
see that you see what they're saying in the third and bringing it into
Yeah.
the second.
And in Tea Party of the Dead, and they start actually doing calculations to figure out how the enemies are going to run.
There's
in
also
certain
Diary of the
directions.
Dead too. We haven't seen that.
Diary of the Dead?
Diary of the Dead.
That's
and
the
then,
first person.
Yeah.
Then there's one after that. What the heck is? 'Cause
Docu-
Diary of the
Documentary of the
Dead
Dead.
is the first person. Well, that's the first person one.
All right.
The other one is no, I can't remember. It's on
how
Netflix.
about Cannibal Corpse, Spawn of the Wretched, or Eaten Back to Life? What do you think of that?
How about Shaun of the Dead or
That's
Zombie
That's
good
excellent.
or Zombieland?
Zombieland was
Zombieland's
excellent
good.
too.
Yeah.
That was pretty good.
Zombieland was a fantastic movie.
How about Dawn of the Bread?
Right.
What?
Night of the Living Bread. That was-
Fido was cute.
Yeah.
Fido was good.
Wait,
Wait, does Fallout have zombies? I'm not even sure. It's Agorismo.
Well,
put things
it's
in.
got like goblins,
Yeah.
Okay.
sort of people.
You know what? Also
I don't
has
know about
goblins.
Vegas.
This is
Troll
post-radiation
Troll
thing
2
there?
does.
Yeah.
Can we talk about that?
okay.
Because you guys cut me off
Yeah,
last week.
if I buy a new
All right.
Fallout game, do I get a Pip-Boy?
I doubt it.
Uh,
You could probably make one.
I could probably
Hey, there's
make
the new
one.
color Nook. You could maybe make one
Yeah,
of
it's
that.
true. Yeah,
Oh,
a
so
little
should
big.
I bother reading World War Z? By the way,
yeah. Why
no.
not? Sure, why not?
I have it, but no.
I haven't read it. I did like the survival guide, but
Okay,
You
have
should probably
read
look into
any
the
of
comic.
the Marvel Zombie series?
no.
No,
I don't
Marvel
think so.
Zombies.
I've seen some of it, and I
All
was just, not interested.
I mean, I found that kind of fascinating. Though. It's like apparently the zombie whatever infection it was came from some other Earth, and then they went through the transdimensional vortex, went to Earth 613 or whatever it's called, and then the zombie infection went there. But they don't. The superheroes get infected by the zombies, but they don't start dying or anything like that. But they retain their powers and retain their intelligence. But for some reason, they still have a thirst for flesh and blood and like to kill things. But with their fantastic superpowers as well. So
As they should.
Yeah, it makes things
So
just
is
completely
it just like
crazy.
an extra craving? It's like some of those people who like get knocked on the head and suddenly, they have a craving for
Peanut butter.
Are you talking about pregnant people?
No, there's a story. It's just like
That's how people get pregnant in his
I was just
world.
gonna say, when they're pregnant, you hit them, and then they crave salt and vinegar and tuna.
No, you hit them, then they become pregnant, and then they start doing.
But then you hit them after you
And
find
then you
out.
hit them again anyway.
push them down the steps.
Preventative.
Yeah. All right. So what happens is like Superman gets infected, Batman. I think I don't really remember whether he gets infected. Spider-Man, Wolverine, all the X-Men. They all get infected. Everybody gets infected.
Wait, but can Wolverine get infected? Because doesn't he instantly start to
That's
heal?
what I thought about too. But apparently he
see?
did get infected.
Wait, how
and
would
it's still
Superman get infected?
I don't know. He's a
not
DC.
even
He's a
He's
DC
an alien.
character. Yeah, he's a DC character. I don't know, but
See, DC, I never.
I saw the DC booth at Comic-Con this year, and it was pretty good. What's his name was actually there? Alex Ross.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So
Nice.
anything with
Oh, of
Alex
course,
Ross. Yeah. I don't know, anything with Alex Ross is gonna be like, okay,
We know.
I'll cut it some slack.
We're gonna do like a Thinking Liberty spin-off where
Yeah.
just Tennis and I talk about geek stuff.
I
No.
thought Tech News was like Tennyson and Antonio talking
And
about
I do.
geek
I
stuff.
got a lot of tech news today too.
All right,
I got
so-
it straight from Cliff Williams. It's just amazing.
All right, so before we get into that section and other, I guess, more easily relatable to Liberty stuff, Laura, you wanted to talk about this Troll 2 film.
I want to say, if you do anything special for yourself this year, you will watch this movie. If you hate vegetarians as much as I do, then you'll completely understand where this movie's coming from.
I like
Probably one of the best movies
vegetarians.
ever made. What?
I like vegetarians. They're cool. They're
Just watch Troll
The
2.
movie,
All right.
the movie was written was directed by an Italian guy, written by his Italian wife, who said that she wrote the story after becoming fed up with all her friends becoming vegetarians and
Wow.
trying to push it on her.
To
Okay,
under-
I can definitely see that.
To understand where this movie is, it sits comfortably in between. I think it's right below. No, it's above Manos: The Hands of Fate, and it's underneath Plan 9 from Outer Space. So it's number 2
Two
in the
movies
Internet
I have never
movie
seen.
database's
You are the
worst
second
movie.
Jamaican person today that has said that they've never seen Plan 9 from Outer Space.
apparently our people don't see these movies. So
I think we should invite
I
everyone
haven't
over to
seen
watch this.
I
stuff.
just don't. You've not seen it either.
No.
really.
he's actually
You know,
Jamaican.
I don't
It's
think
quite
you're welcome
charming,
back here.
actually.
I'm sorry, but if you haven't seen Plan 9, look, I've got the box set right here of, and I think Bosco knows exactly what I'm reaching for.
That's a lot of movies there.
It's not that many movies. It's
Yeah,
the-
that DVD stack is about as thick as my copy of Human Action, and I haven't
That's
finished
true.
that either.
Yeah, but these are DVDs. You can watch this. If you had to watch Human Action, that would take your lifetime.
But a
This
picture's
is
worth
the-
1,000 words.
This is the Ed Wood box set with Glenda, Jailbait, Bride of the Monster, Plan 9 from Outer Space, Night of the Ghouls, and the Haunted World of Edward D.
Yeah.
Jr.
Bosco
Wood
says
Jr.
Ed Wood box set. He said it just before it came out, and he's
Yeah, and so someone has to borrow this. One of you two is going to borrow this and at least watch
why don't-
Plan 9 from Outer Space.
Why don't we just, get some popcorn in our pajamas and make a night of it?
I think we should.
do that,
I don't
too.
see why not.
We'll have a Thinking Liberty slumber party.
We have a 2-person sleeping bag, but since Biles the size of half a person, we could definitely fit another person in there with me.
I live too far away, so you're
I
gonna have,
missed-
you're gonna
to
have to
answer-
webcast that whole thing.
I don't think Mystery Science Theater ever touched Troll 2. I'm pretty sure they didn't. They only touched Manos.
So what can all this stuff we were talking about teach us about liberty?
Nothing.
All right, then.
It's
says-
more entertaining than liberty.
Yeah, Halloween's around the corner. We got to talk about stuff.
It says the people who are brainless, the statist around you, just blast them.
Now, there's actually a horror movie that one of Bile's friends is doing, right? Chartarum?
Chartarum.
by John Shaw.
Aren't you
and-
promoting that movie?
Well, I was sort of. I mean, John Shaw was like overwhelmed. He's like the
Yeah.
producer, the writer, the director, the editor, the everything guy, and he was a little overwhelmed. He couldn't find the time to actually promote his own movie, so I tried to do that. If you go on Facebook and look up Chartarum, you'll find it. Friend the page.
Like the
They-
page,
they-
fan the page.
Yeah, whatever the hell you
You
do.
do something.
They've got a website that I host for them, and they've got a bunch of information up
Oh.
there. But there's a lot of people related to the Free State Project that are in the movie and are helped out. And so if you like
Okay.
those guys,
Is the
I
the
do.
sneak
I
preview,
like all of them pretty much.
Is the sneak preview that we saw at Pork
it's
Fest
not
up
out.
yet? No.
No.
Okay.
I don't think that they're actually going to show that anywhere.
I just want to say that before we get too far, Bosco has some very important news that someone has actually registered. Is Michael Jackson a zombie yet.com? I don't know about .org or .net. I guess it's a commercial domain.
Gotta get
It's an important
.info.
question, and so it deserves its own domain.
Well, you've seen the South Park where Michael
Yes.
Jackson he refuses to go like to the afterlife until he wins like a little girl beauty pageant. So
Yeah,
it's a good one.
Yeah, creepy. Those guys are good at doing that kind of thing.
That's what they do. Creepy stuff.
Creepy stuff. So let's get into non-creepy stuff. Tennyson, you and I were at the New York Students for Liberty conference.
Yeah, that was pretty awesome, right?
I enjoyed it. I mean,
Were you there for Michael Strong's talk?
yeah.
Yeah, what did you think of that?
It was very interesting.
It was, wasn't
you
it?
know, I felt with all the speakers, like, I'm not quite on the same page as them in terms of, I'm an anarchist, I'm more radical than these guys are. It's slightly different perspective. But I felt that every speech was, I learned a lot and had a lot of good information and good perspectives. Certainly a lot to think about. Michael Strong, he had a lot that I feel is like almost like a complementary to my efforts where
Yeah.
he's like
I'm pretty sure Strong's also an anarchist, but he doesn't like go out and bombastically say it or anything. But
this is
there
anarchy.
you go. Well, this is an anarchist yelling bombastically, or actually, this is an anarchist just talking rather calmly in a radio voice. But you, on the other hand, you were there during Strong's talk, and I had walked out of the room, so I didn't get to hear all of it. But what I've heard from other impressions is that it was one of the best talks of the entire program.
Now, one thing I didn't really like about it is that he gave like an evolutionary psychology reason for why libertarian ideas are hard to accept, and that is as people evolved in small tribes, anybody who was seen as a freeloader was a detriment to the tribe, and then eventually anybody who didn't like harass the freeloader or free rider became a target for harassment. So libertarians are seen as the people who don't harass the free riders. But I think it's much simpler is that people are conditioned by birth and have been for centuries to accept some form of dominating authority. And if you don't go fully against that, then you're going fully against what people have been taught their whole lives, and that takes time and a lot of effort to overcome that. And if you don't go fully, then people see where you're not going fully, and they think you're a hypocrite when you're just, you have different
I
take
don't
on it.
disagree necessarily, but I think it's certainly there are certain valid. I mean, one, we don't know all of. We certainly don't understand all of human behaviors and where they come from or where they're
Paul
derived.
Krugman does.
Paul might, but
Double it.
but there are obviously there are certain biases that are very base that are built in evolutionarily. I mean, and if you look at nature, even our closest relatives, They have hierarchies of some sort. There's alpha male, there's silverback gorillas.
I don't know. The bonobos don't really seem to have any of that.
Well, not all, but we're not as closely related genetically to them as others. So
they're probably the closest out of anything, so genetically and everything else, bonobos. But the chimpanzees, the other non-gracile chimpanzees, are closely related to it. They also have a non-hierarchical thing, basically. Gorillas, on the other hand, they've got
further
some
removed.
Yeah, further removed, but they've got some alphas, and when males are challenged, like the big silverback gorilla gets challenged by another young male who comes up, or a child who turns out not to be his, he simply eats the younger one. It's something that we
so it's certainly in our lineage.
It's pretty far back in there. We come from the better side, so the gracile chimpanzees, the bonobos, are where we are, and what they do all day is basically have sex. So.
Do they watch cartoons also?
No. They don't have time for that.
Oh, man.
So
rough life.
They could simply not be able to.
Yeah, they can apparently. Like they passed the reflection test and they've watched.
Obviously they.
They don't have
can,
TVs.
But they don't have TVs.
Not yet.
And I don't think they've invented them.
They're pretty smart though, so I wouldn't put it past them. Maybe they're hiding them somewhere.
Did Planet of the Apes have it wrong?
Yes, they did.
Okay.
But
in any case, my point is, I think
we should talk about
certainly evolutionarily there are biases built within the human race.
Yeah.
There are certain human conditions, and that isn't to say that they can't be overcome,
right,
or that we understand exactly what they are. And obviously, they don't apply to everybody. But these are averages. Species are based on averages of like genetic makeups. So there's certain, I think you can argue biologically one where, I think, was it Patry Friedman was talking about how there's been different studies, and one study found low end, like 5% of people are libertarian minded just in general. That's their gut feeling, upwards to like 15 or 16%. And, whether or not that's true is besides the point, but if in fact there is biases towards, say, libertarian or non-libertarianism, then we need to look to accept that if those are truly human conditions, and figure out the best way to work around them, and whether that's education or building
them.
Systems with.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. So like the analytical anarchists would claim that perhaps there are these biases, and libertarian ideas. Consequentially give us better results for what most people would think are better results, as in higher standards of living, less violent, more comfortable lives. And as such, the real goal for libertarians should be figuring out a system in which that incentivizes the most people to be libertarian, and not trying to convince them morally that libertarianism is the best way. And that's one argument that the analytical anarchists have.
And the synthetic anarchist.
What's that?
And the synthetic anarchist.
Yeah. And I think all these different patterns have merit. It's just a matter of through time figuring out which ones are more accurate than others, and then trying to go down those roads.
Yeah. So getting back to the SFL conference, that was Michael Strong. He had a very good talk.
Yeah.
And
our friend who's a guest on the show, of course, from.
Masood?
No, not well. Masood as well, but he didn't really have a talk. He was just running the entire thing. He was the MC for it. But Bob Bowden, our good friend Bob Bowden, of the Cartel movie, actually showed a little bit of the Cartel movie, a bit of the DVD that he had, and it probably
looks
was
fantastic.
Yeah, it does. It was one of the strongest presentations of the entire thing. I think that one had the greatest impression because he's got a great stage presence as well. So I think. I'm going to pick that DVD up, or he's just going to have to give me several free copies.
Yeah, I will also get free copies.
Okay.
No, but I don't remember when it's coming out, but it's not out yet on DVD. It's the Cartel movie. It's basically takes a look at New Jersey's government education system, and the part we were seeing, he only showed like the first 10 minutes of it. So we saw the introduction. And then we saw how so much money goes into bureaucracy.
Oh,
that,
yeah.
When people say the schools, they're underfunded. It's not that they're underfunded. It's just a lot of the money doesn't go to actual teaching. It goes to, projects for connected contractors. It goes to bureaucrats who make six-figure salaries and get high
bureaucrats'
severed.
friends who get these other crazy title jobs, like the assistant, teacup holder or something, and they get a six-figure salary too.
And I mean, it's like, I obviously we didn't see the whole film, but I feel like sometimes I guess too bad Bosco isn't on here, but
Yeah. Not that he would know anything about this.
yeah, but I mean, it's like sometimes I guess. I don't want to say that teachers are blameless, but sometimes
they are.
Every teacher becomes a scapegoat when they're in this system where they're not even really the problem. Like hardly even comes down to them. Besides the fact that they're teaching in a coercive monopoly government institution, but it's like there's just so much on top of the teachers' salaries, the teachers' benefits, that just really it's non-productive. So that's something that I'm really excited to see the full movie. Again, it's the cartel movie. Should be good. What else did you like about the conference? I had a Center for a Stateless Society display.
That's true.
Was invited by Masood to table, and a lot of people they hadn't really heard too much
home
about
anyway.
us. I carried it.
It was just kind of heavy.
It sucked. I know. I brought it. I brought it down to Hoboken too. I didn't even just go right on the bus with it. I had to get out of the subway and walk to the path, with this giant display because I was going somewhere afterwards.
It was a pain carrying that thing, from California. So,
I believe it. It must have been painful.
Bringing it in the airport, waiting online with that thing, getting it weighed, and it's like, okay, fine. And I had books in that thing. I took the book out when I gave it to you. I was like, oh gosh, it's heavy. And then getting it, I was walking around New York because I didn't get to the right entrance when I was at Columbia. I was like, okay, I got dropped off somewhere. Then I had to walk around with this thing on my back until I got to the place in Columbia. Then I go to the desk, like, okay, you can't come in this way. You got to go back around the street to the other end. It's like, oh, come on. This thing weighs like 40 pounds and it's really awkward.
Yeah, I know. It's like a one strap, giant bag. So it's like, it'll be fine if it was like in a backpack, but this thing was huge too. It was like
it's 2x3 or something. It's just it's really big. And I hit people with this thing. I knocked things over with it.
I almost hit a stroller with it on the subway.
These are stories you shouldn't tell. So Roderick found a sucker. I mean, a volunteer to take it from California.
But yeah, I mean, it was a nice display. So
it was.
I wish I had a little more literature, but we did what we could. We're a new organization.
I wish the light worked.
We got a lot of interest from people. A lot of people didn't really know much about the Center for a Stateless Society.
That's true.
I actually talked to some of the other vendors there from Cato and Fee, and they weren't too familiar with us, but everyone seemed glad that we were there, or at least didn't seem angry that we were there.
No, that's true. I mean, I heard quite a few. No. In fact, there were more anarchists there than I think there had ever been ever. In fact, there's just more anarchists in general. It's amazing how many there are people asking the speakers on anti-state questions, asking them how to justify government and states, and watching them completely avoid the questions or completely dance around in their answers. And it's just going to get more and more anarchists as time goes on. So Darien is winning. Somehow Darien is winning.
Well, I mean, you had the Fee guy. He's there with I'm not denigrating these organizations. I'm just saying it's funny. You had the Foundation for Economic Education with he's got suit and a bow tie. The Cato guy. He's got a ponytail.
That was Carl.
A ponytail and a suit jacket, but he's just dressed kind of casual. And then I'm wearing all black. And I've got the Center for a Stateless Society printouts. And it got a lot of interest. People were interested in that. A lot of people wanted to know more about anarchism. Lysander Spooner was brought up to one of the speakers. And
shout out to Pericles who brought up Lysander Spooner as he usually does.
And and fortunately, thanks to James Tuttle, I had some Lysander Spooner literature there. And people were looking at that. So
I heard a few people being challenging towards you with their questioning, but there was something. There was that one guy who came up to you while I was over there. I forgot how.
Oh yeah, right in the beginning. I don't
Yeah.
know. He seemed like he really wanted to debate, and I
Yeah.
mean, I like discussing stuff.
Yeah,
If you're there to listen and learn, and as well as teach,
Yeah,
that's
he
that's
seems
cool.
seems like a neophyte where he's like, it's a debate club. Like, I gotta find people to debate.
Now, interestingly enough, there was a guy from the Leadership Institute, which is some kind of
gosh.
conservative thing.
Yeah.
He's walking over there, and immediately he just sticks out. You know,
Yeah.
like everyone there, that they're dressed up because it's a conference and all the professional, but they all seem cool. This guy, I don't know. There's just something about the way he walks. Like
Something
when
about
you
him.
see like a politician or a cop
Yeah.
who's been doing it for too long, and there's just something that's not quite human about them.
Mm-hmm.
And like this guy just radiated that, and he's just like he comes over and I don't know. He started talking to me like
Yeah.
like he saw we had the pamphlet out. Liberty for all means immigrants too,
Right,
which
right.
basically it's a piece I wrote for Center for a Stateless Society saying that people are interested in individual liberty that needs to extend to immigrants to be consistent, both strategically and morally, and politically. But he's like, oh, well, what do you think of illegal immigration? And, I basically said, well, I don't think states have the right to draw these borders across the earth, and that people who cross them
They're
without
not
asking
criminal.
permission
Right.
are just asserting their natural liberty.
Right.
He's like, oh, that's interesting. He's like, oh, I'm with the Leadership Institute. He gives
Oh,
me his
good.
card.
He wants to bring
It's
you
like-
in.
It's like, okay.
I know. I've seen the Leadership Institute turn some other organizations into. Well, I'm not going to say it, but there's some good times there. I heard dinner was good. I ended up missing it because I had to go to work, but I made it back from work quick enough, and then we all went out to the bar afterward, and we tied one on. Then we went to another bar afterward.
I
and,
didn't see you afterward.
Yeah, well, hell, I was there. So where did you go?
I don't know. I went with everyone else.
Yeah, first we went to that other bar, the one that we had to go downstairs into.
Oh, see, I didn't make it there fast enough to go downstairs, so I think I went to the other place.
Oh, you went to the other-
before
yeah.
you got. Maybe I left before you
so
got
that
there.
was I went to the other bar too, which was good. It was the first bar that we went to like last year because we done all that last year. It was a very good time. There were lots of drinks there. I ended up using my credit card to buy a drink, and not for myself, of course. But it was like a $5 drink, and they have a $12 minimum. And I'm like, how am I going to get my credit card back? I got to buy another drink and buy another drink for somebody else. I ended up buying some cranberry because that was pretty good. And I don't know how they made the cranberry.
I just got water because that's how I roll. But I met a lot of interesting people.
Yeah.
So if there's a Students for Liberty conference going on in your area,
Go to it.
Yeah, go to it. I mean, it doesn't mean that you have to be
A student.
A student, yeah, you don't have to be a student necessarily. You don't have to be like. You don't have to be ideologically committed to any strain of libertarian thought. Like, there are people there who are just getting into it. There are people there of a variety of thoughts. So,
Our friend, our co-host Bosco, saying, I have visions of Darian wearing a black bandana around his face, making Molotovs inside his cardboard box pamphlet stand while talking to Republicans.
that didn't happen.
That almost happened.
No.
He didn't make a Molotov, though. But everything else is exactly right.
All right. So, apparently somebody says the SFL here had a horrible list of speakers.
Yeah?
One was a neocon Islamophobe. That
What
doesn't
was-
sound good. You know,
All right,
I was skeptical of the speakers.
I mean,
like I said,
I
that-
know most of the speakers there. Like I know them. I've communicated with them personally. I'm okay with like a bunch of them. But I want to know who was the person at that SFL conference over there. Do you know the name? Like if you know the name, just put it there in the chat, and I'll be able to. I'm not going to read it on the air, but it'll be interesting to read it.
Yeah, I mean, like I said before, I'm on a different page as more radical,
Right.
More anarchist than these people. But I learned something from the speeches, so they're
James-
definitely worthwhile speakers.
James Otteson was there, and Otteson's had some very good writing as well. There's a book of his more recent that David Gordon from the Mises Institute he gave a review to. It's called Actual Ethics. That sample chapter you can find online, all about education, and he argues for the freedom of education on the same basis that Americans usually argue for the freedom of religion. So that it's a freedom of conscience type of thing. You have to be able to do this thing, or else you simply do not live in a free society. And free education, freedom of education, has to be justified in the same way, and can be done in the courts and everything. And this is how that he imagines it can be done. And excellent read, excellent argument as well. It's good ethics.
All right, so we're actually going to have to wrap this up.
Yeah, we gotta go
soon. We're going to have to do the tech news.
All
but
right.
what was it? Our chat room person says Alan Corwin, big gun rights and gun law guy, but he's an Islamophobe. He has a newsletter about it. So apparently he was at one of the Students for Liberty conferences. I don't know what he was talking about. Maybe they just had him for one purpose and just kind of,
See,
I thought he would deliver value for one thing. Yeah. So I'm not too familiar with him.
I wasn't going to read the name, but since you read the name, that's his name. I
mean, if Students for Liberty is very open, very interested in communication organizations. So I don't know. Find out why they had this guy there. Find out what he was talking about.
I know people at the planning board for SFL and things like that, and I think it'd be a good place to ask that question. So quick tech news here. Things that I've gotten from my friend Cliff Williamson, who's on Facebook. Is it Cliff Williamson or just Cliff Williams? Either way. But he's always got some incredible stuff that he puts up on Facebook. So just random links and titles here. Scientists capture the first direct images of theoretically predicted magnetic monopoles, which is, if you know anything about what I just said, then that sounds very interesting. So, moving on, though, mass can be created inside graphene, says physicists. Every time I hear the word graphene, I think of, Soyuz from, you know the song Soyuz, the Soviet song? I'll play it for you another time, though. But every time I hear that, I hear graphene in my head going exactly how they sing Soyuz. So, graphene. The amazing properties of graphene now include the ability to create mass, according to a new prediction. This is over at Arxiv. That's ARXIV. You'll find it. You'll know it. The nature of mass is one of the great enduring puzzles of science. What is mass, and where does it come from, are questions that have puzzled scientists and philosophers for centuries. So the suggestion that mass can be created inside carbon nanotubes will produce some significant head-scratching. The idea comes from Abdul Aziz Al-Hadiri at Saudi Center of Theoretical Physics in Saudi Arabia, and a few pals who begin with a review of the exotic properties of graphene, a two-dimensional sheet of carbon chicken wire. Alright, we don't have time to actually read this entire thing, or even read what's really, really important about it. But the idea that we can create mass inside is just phenomenal. Look it up. You'll find it. Fascinating stuff.
All right, so is that all the tech news we have time for today?
No, I mean, I could keep going if we got time.
You give us a quick rundown, a quick,
right,
1 minute summary.
I'm just going to read some titles.
Tech news.
Read some titles. Titles like Why Complex Life Probably Evolved Only Once. This is over at New Scientist, and it's a little controversial. But, we do some controversial things as well.
Hey, this show's controversial?
No.
I thought everybody wanted to end all government.
Well, most people do, it's true, but they don't really say it that way. So another thing, something from H Plus Magazine, an excellent little article here by David Pierce, called The Top 5 Reasons Transhumanism Can Eliminate Suffering. And he doesn't just mean human suffering, he means universal, earth-wide suffering of all creatures and all living things everywhere, forever. And it's very, very dramatic and wild and, inspiring because it's just so grand.
I'm thinking of the XKCD comic where it's like futurist predictions, or was it? Maybe it was Saturday Morning Breakfast, where it was like the predictions of a futurist and the time it's going to take
that's
versus
SKCD.
The amount of time.
Yeah,
okay.
So this one, he's not talking about 25 years, which means I like being the only person who has a hovercraft. But he's saying that in the next few centuries, these are things that could be done if human beings accept this kind of responsibility or stewardship over the planet. They could actually not only stop their own suffering by changing themselves and changing their nervous system and making themselves a little bit more inured to pain, making themselves happier all the time, a happy gene that he has found a way to identify or whatever it is, but also taking ownership, if you're going to use the word ownership, over the rest of the world, the rest of the biota, and saying predators no longer have to go after prey. The lions can actually lay down with the lambs. The wolves don't have to murder and torture these other little animals anymore. The entire world ends up changing, and
it sounds like it's going to be a little controversial.
Absolutely, and so people who were very bioconservative, thinking that we can probably change a few things about ourselves, but should we actually be as arrogant to change the entire biosphere, to change everything that evolution has already created? And
Unfortunately, I haven't read the article, and we don't have time to debate it.
We
now.
don't.
So, any more tech news before we roll into the Wally Conger interview?
No. I think that we should just go right into it.
Yeah. All right. So, we have one final comment from the chat room. Transhumanism sounds good in theory, but what about the roads? Who will build the roads?
You know nobody will use roads in a post-singularity world. Come on now.
All right, so again, you're listening to thinkingliberty.net. This is Nauseating D. I can't even remember my new nickname, but this is Darian. We have Tennyson. We had Lore. We had Bile.
Hey, Lore.
And Bosco's out there in Chatland recovering from being ill or something. I don't know, but we're going to head out for tonight. Enjoy the interview with Wally Conger, and
he almost vomited on a well-dressed kid today, apparently. So
He's pregnant.
he's not pregnant.
Yes, he is.
He's a little pregnant.
Just a little.
Yes.
Slap him with the wood.
all right. On that note, go out there, live freedom. Thinkingliberty.net.
I like big butts, and I cannot lie.
This is a Thinking Liberty recorded interview with Wally Conger. It's October 14th. And we're on thinkingliberty.net.
October 14th, not a Tuesday, hence the recorded video part. Or audio.
This is picture radio, remember? All right, so Wally, thanks a lot for being on the show, and how are you doing?
I'm doing great. It's my pleasure to be here. And, it's a great relief that you pronounced my name correctly.
That's why we pay Darian the big bucks.
I get conjure a lot. I get people who just don't even try. They just, they're afraid of it. So I'm just delighted that I didn't have to prompt you.
The people who are afraid of it, what do? Are they like Wally C?
Well, the thing about my last name, Conger, appears quite often in crossword puzzles. So that people who do crossword puzzles, they know what it is. Because there's a conger eel, seafaring creature, and so if you come across a 6-letter word for eel, it's always conger.
Excellent.
Good to know. Or if you come across a crossword puzzle that says Wally blank, then you know the answer too.
Yeah, I'm sure that'll happen eventually.
It will when we make a crossword puzzle.
That's right.
All right. Maybe we'll make an audio crossword. We'll do it live during the show.
Heck will that work? It'll be the most boring thing ever. We're going to give you 60 seconds to think about what this should be, and then we'll move on.
It'll be very difficult.
Sounds good to me.
All right. Wally, why don't you give yourself a little introduction so our audience members know a little bit about you and why we might want you on the show?
Okay. Well, from the libertarian point of view, I have been in the movement for more years than I even want to reveal. It's been a few decades. And I go way back to Murray Rothbard when he was still alive and kicking, quite a ways back before that. And Young Americans for Freedom, which was a conservative youth group back in the 60s and into the 70s. I think it may still be around, but it had a very definite libertarian faction within it that eventually broke off and pretty much launched the modern libertarian movement back in the late 60s and early 70s. So I've been in the movement for many, many years. And in the last 15 years, I worked for myself. I got out of a corporate job. I actually got booted out of a corporate job. Was de-sized and decided I would never work for a corporation or really anybody else again, except maybe clients that I, went out and looked for myself. And so for 15 years I've been doing that. And then the last year and a half or so, I've gotten into the area of internet marketing, mainly because it was something that I could start with no real overhead, and I didn't like dealing with clients on a one-on-one basis anymore. I thought, why not just teach them marketing and business skills, by digital download instead of having to deal with them in person. So that's kind of where I'm coming from.
All right, that sounds interesting. We'll be talking a little bit in more detail about the whole working for yourself thing, but you seem to be a proponent of agorism, and I'm just wondering, how would you briefly describe this term to someone who's never really heard of it before, maybe isn't even that familiar with libertarian ideas in general?
Well, that's kind of a toughie in that you need a little background. The agora is an ancient Greek term for marketplace. And a fellow, about 35 years ago, named Samuel Edward Konkin III, felt that the libertarian movement in general, and that his mentor, Murray Rothbard, who I mentioned, I think to you earlier, who is was a libertarian anarchist economist, felt that the movement was kind of backsliding and was becoming more conservative and compromising, in that they were, whereas the movement had been very radical before and very anarchistic before, and our mottos were things like smash the state and sell the post office and things like that. Suddenly we had a libertarian party that had been launched, the Cato Institute had been launched, and it was much more political action going on in the way of electoral politics, and that the libertarian movement was becoming more a third party, and they were advocating using the ballot box to gain freedom, and Sam Konkin thought that was inconsistent with our ideals. So agorism was Sam Konkin's answer, his remedy, so to speak, of to kind of get the movement back on course and back to its original ideals. And he always said that libertarian thought and action had to be genuinely consistent with living a free life in a free society, and that's what agorism tries to accomplish.
And if you're just real quick, I mean, if you're interested in that end of it, New Libertarian Manifesto, can't rave about it enough. You can find that on Invisible Molotov. You can find that on Liberty Activism. I know that was one of the first things that I really printed out and folded a whole heck of a lot of with Darian, and that kind of introduced me to Sam, and that was
and to printing and folding.
Yeah, and to printing and folding, and of the two, I preferred being introduced to agorism, but it's a good resource for that.
Now there's another little book called an Agorist Primer by Konkin that was posthumous. It was just published a couple of years ago, and I don't know if that's available as a free download online.
I think it is now.
It may be, but it's certainly available. You can buy it online, and that is a really nice companion to to Sam's old manifesto.
Yeah, that one's a nice read too.
Yeah, it's very.
I mean, he wrote it about 30 years ago, but it was really only available as a Xerox copy. If he felt that you were ready for it, he'd hand you a copy. He was a little eccentric, he was a lot eccentric. So.
Well, aren't we all?
Yeah, you gotta be to be in this movement, right?
Yeah, we're not centrists here.
We're eccentrists.
Eccentric. We're eccentrist. Extreme politics.
So we've got some major libertarian cred thrown down right here. I mean, we're talking about Rothbard, and then we're talking about Conklin, and it's nice. It's nice to hear these names brought up in the context of somebody who's talked with these people. It's kind of refreshing.
Yeah. It was. I was just a kid. I was a high school kid, and I went to a libertarian conference at USC in L.A. And Rothbard spoke, and Robert Lefebvre, and who else was there? Dana Rohrabacher, who later sold out and became a Republican congressman.
We can just pretend he's infiltrating Congress.
Yeah, he was.
We're waiting for him to reveal his master plan.
Way back when, he was like the minstrel of the libertarian movement. He would sit outside on the lawn and play his guitar and sing, folk songs and stuff. So.
And now he's deep undercover. Is that what you're telling me?
It was a deep. When he went into the Republican Party, it was quite a shock to a lot of us. So, but I've been in and out and following the movement for a long time.
Now, while we're talking about this, was there any point? I mean, you have the perspective from which you can view trends in the movement. Have you seen things grow? Have you seen them contract? Would you say there's more great minds in the movement, less great minds? What do you see happening?
I think we're almost in the third generation of the modern movement. And I think Rothbard was the first generation. I think Sam Konkin was part of the second generation. And now we've got people like Roderick Long. I've got Brad Spangler. A lot of guys who are very active and doing a lot of writing. You guys talk about the Center for a Stateless Society all the time, and that's a relatively new thing. And I think the people writing for that are really the new guys. I mean, they're really pushing everything forward. I think the movement's in pretty good shape, actually, all things considered. I was so idealistic. I don't know, 25, 30 years ago, I actually thought, well, what will I argue with people about once the revolution is complete? I thought by now, certainly, everyone would have awakened and everyone would have read Man, Economy, and State by Rothbard and seen the error of, having the state run everything. But
there'll always be more to argue. That'll never go.
There's always going to be that group of people who want to run the show, so.
Yeah, well, we can argue about who is most responsible for the best things that created these great changes, and maybe we'll argue about it here, and Bosco will be wrong,
as I usually am. Yeah, when you've got a room full of contrarians, there's never something that you can't argue about. We could always just whittle it down to the super fine points. I like my buttons to have 5 holes. No, 4 holes is the only way to go in a button.
There are buttons with 5 holes?
I think libertarians are worse than most. I think they're always arguing about one little bit of minutia, over another.
As opposed to the big picture. Yeah, I'd agree with that.
Well, yeah, I mean, I run into so many people who said, "Oh, I'll never go to an anti-war protest because it's filled with commies." Yeah, but what is our goal? They're not all going to be communists there. Sometimes you have to build alliances with other people, and that was something Sam Konkin used to deal with all the time, because he's got more of his time dealing with the left wing, quote unquote left wing, than he did with the more conservative libertarian side.
Yeah, well, I mean, I like to say that I have not a 100% perfect detailed view of where I want my life, my freedom, and society to generally be, but I have a pretty good idea. And while I work towards that, it's good to incorporate other people to in my activities, so I have more people to talk to, more people to influence, and we'll move in that general direction, and we'll all refine our views and maybe change a few things along the way. I'm not going to agree with anybody 100%, so it's just a matter of finding the threshold and the right things and the right way to go.
Yeah, you gotta be willing to talk to people, though. That whole "I disagree with you, so I'm not going to talk to you" thing is just like, it strikes me as an absolutely terrible way to go, because how are you ever going to find any kind of resolution?
They'll want to talk to you so much that they'll just change everything they believe.
Because you're so incredibly awesome. I think the idea, too, of going into anything without, ever thinking that you could possibly change your mind is another... people can smell that out right away, and it's not a particularly healthy thing to do. So you go into things with an open mind. You try to talk to as many people as you can. You try to be consistent. That's the best you can do.
Well, consistency is really key, I think. You want as much as possible to move your lifestyle and what you're doing and who you're working with, all that into some kind of consistency with what your end goal is. The means do make a difference.
All right, so speaking of means, we try to give our audience some ideas of how to actually get into creating more liberty. So, in terms of agorism, what are some of the means that people can use? What are maybe some of the first steps they can do towards that quest to a free society?
First thing is stop working politically. Don't vote. I've voted in one election, and I think it was for one of the marijuana initiatives here in California way back when. You just don't participate in the electoral process, any campaigns, and for the most part, try to avoid movements and groups that use political means. I mean, that's their only function is to get people elected. That's one way. So that kind of eschews the Libertarian Party. I've never had anything to do with them. Certainly don't work for government agencies or even for organizations or businesses that accept government grants and support of any sort. And I made that mistake. I worked I won't even tell you the name of the company, but I worked for a major corporation for 15 years and deluded myself into thinking it was okay because the head of their legal department was, coincidentally, Ed Clark. I don't know if you guys remember Ed Clark or have heard of him. He ran for president on the Libertarian Party ticket in 1980. And I think he was the first candidate who really, did he get the first, I don't remember. Anyway, he made the biggest dent in an election in the Libertarian Party in his time. And so I kind of deluded myself thinking, well, if Ed's part of this corporation, it can't be all bad. And I was just a hack writer and editor, and I was just kind of putting out propaganda, but it was all aimed at the employees. So I wasn't really part of the machine that was convincing everybody that we were a nice, friendly corporation. So, dovetailing into that, I'd say, try to escape the job culture. That'd be a way to be more of a participant in agorism, and certainly the corporate culture, and build your own business. If that's something you feel you can do, I always recommend that people kind of set up their own business without walls and, preferably without employees because they're a pain in the ass. And just, be a. I'll tell you who really inspired me years ago, Harry Brown, How I Found Freedom in an Unfree World. You ever read that?
No, I haven't read that one, no.
It is classic for just self-liberation type stuff. It's very apolitical. It's just how to liberate yourself. And he had a chapter on earning money, making money. Should you go out and find a job, whatever. And his big point was, if you set yourself up as a problem spotter and then offer solutions to people's problems for money, you'll do fine in life. So he would give the example of you're at a cocktail party. This book was written back in the 70s. You're at a cocktail party and you're talking to somebody, and he's running a small business in town, and you ask him, what do you find? What's your biggest challenge in your business? The guy says, I can't get my sales staff to do anything. You could say to him, if you feel you're in a position to do so, or if you're quick on your feet, I think I could solve that problem for you. How would you like me to come in and help train some of your sales staff? That was a Harry Brown idea that I really took to heart, because he just kind of walked through life and let business come to him. He just spotted it. He spotted those opportunities. And they might be small ones, they might be big ones, but I always thought that was a great idea. So that's kind of what I did when I left the corporate world years ago, was, and I wrote an ebook about it, which you can download for free off of my website, which is wallyconger.com, WALLYCONGER.com. And essentially what it talks about is how when I lost my corporate job and left the corporate world, I decided to do what my instincts told me to do, which was to go down to the nearest coffee house or Starbucks and sit on my ass and read science fiction novels, which was about all I felt like doing at the time. And I found that business started dropping in my lap. I had some marketing background, and there were a lot of local business people who would drop by and have coffee, and they'd strike up conversations with me or I with them. And eventually I'd find myself kind of suggesting they do this with an advertisement or do that with their staff, and they'd say, well, maybe you can come in and do some work for us. So that's kind of been what I've been advocating people try to do, figure out what their core skills are and then monetize them on their own rather than sell them to one single company.
Cool.
So
I didn't mean to cut you off there. I was just gonna say, if you have more tips you could share, maybe people who don't have quite the experience you had when you went into self-employment, and just how that can make you a more free individual.
Well, it makes you more free because you're not answering to a boss. You're not involved in company politics. You're not involved in sitting in meetings you don't want to be in. So I think the freedom end is pretty obvious. I make it sound pretty simple to do, and it's not. But the fact is, nowadays, anybody with any kind of idea that they can figure out how to market, that's marketable, if they've got that idea and a laptop computer, they got a business. I mean, you can start an online business lickety-split. It doesn't take any time at all. The overhead just to start is near zero, and it's so minimal to anything else I've ever done. And there's just so much information out there, and I offer some of that at my site. I learned a lot of it just kind of scouring the internet and figuring out how things work and how to build websites and how to, use an autoresponder. And it's like you guys with the podcast, I do not a podcast, but most of the products that I'm selling right now, and I've just got 2 or 3 that are available right now, are basically built on audio interviews that I've done with other professionals. And that's easily recorded and uploaded and downloaded by your customers. And there's just so many ways to make money online now. But you can also use your internet presence to generate customers I never recommend anybody have a business with walls. I'd like to stay away from walls, just be loose and mobile. But you can start a freelance business and really get the word out via the internet. So
cool.
I'm not gonna pretend there isn't a big learning curve, but it's not. I don't think it's as overwhelming as people let it be. Well, just take it a step at a time.
Here's a question for you when it comes to being self-employed. When you no longer had your corporate job and you were reading science fiction novels in Starbucks, how scary was it? I mean, how much was there that, oh my God, how am I going to pay the rent feeling?
Well, I had been in a big corporate job, so they gave me a pretty nice termination package. And also what I did was I took, they had a early retirement package, and for me it was very early retirement, and that wasn't going to kick in for years and years and years. So I had a cushion, but it is scary because you tend to imagine, every time you write a check or every time you pull out your wallet, okay, there's another few bucks going out, and nothing else is coming in. But if you, I'm not saying go to Starbucks and sit and read a book and don't engage with anyone.
Right.
You've really got to make an effort. You've got to be focused that, okay, there are opportunities here. the first date, nothing may happen. The second date, nothing may happen. But within a week or so, I think you'll be talking to people and finding out what they're doing, and you're going to be surprised at how many opportunities are there. I work at a Starbucks or other local coffee places every day, and I go in there now, and I'm usually on the laptop and I'm writing, but somebody will just strike up a conversation. They'll ask me a question, or I'll say something to them. I'll overhear a little piece of conversation, and there was a woman I spoke to just a week or two ago whose husband has been hit real hard in the recession. And he's got his own business, and what he does is he builds fancy, ornate staircases for large homes. And they're not building all that many large homes right now. And so she just started asking questions about, well, what do you do? And I told her I'm a marketing consultant. That's one of the things I do. She said, oh, well, we'll have to give you a call. So we exchanged cards. I have not heard from her yet, but there's every possibility I will. So there's a little bit of business.
Cool. So why don't we get back into the agorism, the actual ism here? Certainly the ways to start your own business relate. So it seems like with agorism that the methodology is almost that everybody should be somewhat entrepreneurial. So you're not beholden to others in your personal life, and that gives you more independence, and then you're not beholden to others in political life, and you kind of build up that way and become not necessarily autarkic, like you don't need any, like you're self-sufficient, you're subsistence farming or whatever, but that you have a measure of autonomy, that you don't have
Everybody is their own subsistence farmer. Stay out of my rice paddies.
So
yeah, it's kind of a lifestyle thing. You try to make your life as free as possible, and you can go work for somebody. I mean, I'm not saying you've got to be self-employed to be an agorist. I mean, far from it. I don't know. It's funny in the movement, and especially online, you talk to people. You don't know what the hell they do for a living. All you know is that they're a libertarian activist in some way, or they're involved in this or that. They got a website, but you don't know what's their background is.
But I thought we should always live up to the expectations of people we know only through the internet.
Yeah, I'm sure there's a fear among some. Oh God, they're going to find out I work for Exxon, that kind of thing. But I think that's the ideal. I think that's something you kind of try to work toward, you aspire to, and in the meantime, you just try to be consistent with your freedom ideals, and not do business where you don't have to with various bureaucratic government agencies. Try to sidestep things. I mean, silly things like if you can get away with here's one, seatbelt laws. Conkin used to say that if you smoke, he was a heavy smoker. If you smoke a cigarette in the patio of a restaurant that forbids it, or on the street locally here, there's an ordinance in San Luis Obispo, California, and you can't smoke on the street anywhere, and so that would be a display of agorism to to break that law if you feel that it's worth the risk of being fined or imprisoned.
Willful
it's
street
like,
smoking.
Yeah, I never wore seatbelts ever, and Sam would have said that's a display of agorism. Well, about 2 years ago, maybe it's 3 years ago now, I got 2 seatbelt violations within about a week and a half of each other. I got pulled over for seatbelt violations, and that never happened to me before. It's so close to each other that there's a rule here in California. I think it's the penalty doubles with every ticket you get, and so they came so close on top of each other that they didn't even. The second one wasn't twice as much as the first one. But I was paying these seatbelt violations, and it was it's $100+. And I said, screw this. I'll just put my belt on, especially when I see a cop coming. So I put the belt on, and a friend of mine said, "Well, now we know what the cost of freedom is. It's it's $85 or $110 or whatever it was." So that's how much I value freedom. But it's pretty sad. But that's the truth. I mean, if you can get away with my wife cuts hair, is a beautician. That sounds like an old term, but she cuts hair, she colors hair, she cuts men's hair, she cuts women's hair, but she does a lot of it out of the house. Well, that's unreportable, and she does it mainly because it's convenient, because the salon she's done work for will be closed on certain times and whatever. So that's unreportable income, and if you can do things on a black market basis, more power to you. If you can do things under the counter, that's great.
Yeah, going back to
not that I'm advocating anyone breaking the law.
Oh,
or doing unlicensed
heaven forbid.
Yeah.
Going back to the seatbelt thing really quick, that's always an interesting discussion. I might even say argument, depending on where you're having it, as to how effective it is to continuously break a law when you're being fined for it, because at some point you're funding the enforcement of said law. So it might actually make more sense to buckle up when the cop comes by so you don't have to pay the fine, and then get a t-shirt that says seatbelt laws are stupid. And you might actually end up being, more subversive in that fashion. The argument also comes up a lot with going to jail. At what point is it worth continuously being imprisoned?
Right.
Yeah, it's worth discussing.
Exactly. See, now you're thinking like an agorist. You got to balance that stuff.
That's what I loved.
There was and I know you're going to ask me about agorist class theory. That was Sam Konkin's alternative to Marxist class theory. He thought Marxism is dead, which it really is a dead philosophy, and came up with a class theory that would be agoristic. And that little book, which I put together a few years ago, really discusses all those gray areas. Okay, how do you judge what is, when you should break a law, when you shouldn't break a law, when's it worth it, what's the value of this or that, and it's all kind of market driven in a way. So you're right. I mean, you've got to balance things out and figure out, okay, is this going to be worth? I'm making a point, but is it really worth it?
One of my favorite parts in the New Libertarian Manifesto is the whole concept of basically arrest insurance, where it's this you got to love the mathematical precision. It's like, okay, if you've got 1,000 people doing this action and 50 of those people are imprisoned for it, and the cost for those 50 people is that much, this is how much everybody would have to spend in insurance to effectively negate what the state is doing to stop it. I think that's just an excellent idea.
Yeah, but see, for me, that's when agorism doesn't become fun anymore. It's lost its charm. We start running numbers all the time. That was one place where Sam Konkin and I really parted ways. I mean, he was really into the finely slicing the whatever, and I just.
Well,
it's just too much. It's a headache. It's too much work.
That's the nice thing.
Do what you can,
That's the nice thing about the market, though, is we have people like you that can work on freelance marketing and helping other people out with that. And then eventually when we have, agorist actuaries who absolutely love numbers and want to crunch them, then they can work for the agorist insurance agencies that want to insure people.
You got a good point. You're right. I'm sure there's some people listening to this right now that would fit into that category.
All right, so you mentioned agorist class theory. Why don't we talk about that a little bit? What is agorist class theory? I mean, I have a pretty good idea, but just, for a general introduction, how would you describe that? What are the basic ideas behind it?
Agorist class theory is kind of a, like I said before, it's pretty detailed. It's a kind of a detailed spin on the old classical liberal class theory, which predates Marxist class theory, which really just separates. So there are two classes. They're the producers and they're the plunderers. They're the people who are creating and those who are just sucking off the creators. And with the state being kind of the main means that people who want to live by plunder, the means they use to suck off the producers. So agorist class theory gets kind of down, like I said, into that the little gray areas, but it does emphasize when are you in what class? When are you no longer a plunderer? When are you no longer and they're like I said, they're gray areas. Okay, I'm living a 20% agorist lifestyle. The other 80% of the time, I'm working for the post office. That kind of thing. So it's really a we could talk about it for hours and hours and never get anywhere with it, as far as I'm concerned. And it's pretty well summarized in that book, which is a freebie that you can download almost anywhere. You can download it from my site, in fact. If you go to the wallyconger.com/agoristclasstheory.pdf, the PDF is right there. And it's that book was really drawn from a lot of unfinished work that Konkin had done way back in the 70s and 80s.
Okay, yeah. I mean, I think one thing that's important to remember when you're thinking along these lines is that the person who's taking your letters at the postal counter and putting them into boxes is they might draw a similar salary to the cop who goes around busting heads and throwing peaceful people in cages, but their actual effect on liberty is different. So that's like another thing you have to take into account.
You're absolutely right, and that's part of this whole agorist class theory idea, is that those people are kind of the middle class area. They're living off the state, but they're innocent bystanders, and they're unaware of agorist theory or libertarian theory or the freedom philosophy. I mean, it's remarkable to me that people don't understand libertarianism. With all the press and publicity it's gotten for over 40 years, people wander around. They have no idea what you're talking about. You talk about the Libertarian Party, and they don't know what that even means.
That actually kind of segues into my my last general question here. I was just wondering, in your view, what kind of influence has agorism had on the broader libertarian movement and on politics in general? Since I guess since the 70s is when it started being explained.
In the 70s, I think everybody was so flushed with the excitement that there was a Libertarian Party, and there was a Cato Institute, and you had some of the big shots, the Rothbards. I'm blanking out, Karl Hess. Some of these people who were the granddaddies of the libertarian movement were still around, and they were kind of throwing their weight to the Libertarian Party or coexisting with it. And so when agorism kind of was introduced back in the mid to late 70s, it was kind of first of all, it called itself left wing. Agorism was the left arm of the libertarian movement, with the Libertarian Party being the far right conservative arm. And I think it was just viewed as a naughty little brother type of thing. They were the radical faction that really should be ignored. They were, in the last few years, I think particularly since Sam Konkin passed away, which he died early, but he passed away just a few years ago. I think agorism is now becoming more and more with people like Roderick Long and Brad Spangler and a few others. I think it's almost got an equal weight. Oh, then you got the mutualists, you know. You've got Kevin and all that going on. So I think people in the movement are certainly more open to these different factions of libertarianism. They're not just accepting, the Libertarian Party is the way and means, and that's it. So I think the influence of agorism right now is higher than it's ever been.
Well, that's a good place to be in.
Yeah.
Happy to hear it.
Yeah. I think it's got I think agorism has still got a future, and I think you'll find it has a greater presence now than ever. Every year, I think it compounds on itself.
Now, I'm wondering, as someone who's been interested in explaining agorism and promoting it for so long, have you been following any of the New Hampshire stuff going on? There's a lot of agorists up there. There's the Alternatives Expo that's having, well, I guess by the time this airs, the event will be past, but Alternatives Expo. There's Agorist Acres. There's a lot of people who are at least influenced by agorism, and it seems like everyone has at least heard of it.
There was Agora Alley at Porkfest, and Grafton Gulch is pulling on a lot of agorist tendencies.
Right. I've been so busy doing my internet marketing stuff the last year and a half. I kind of lost touch with a lot of that stuff. Listening to you guys, everything I know about all those things is pretty much stuff I picked up from you in your program. So I'm going to have to take some time and give it some closer looks.
Fair enough.
All right.
It all sounds good to me. You know, I'm just trying to keep my head down and stay out of this political election. You know, we've got in California, we've got Jerry Brown coming back.
Yeah, he's coming back.
15 years as governor. I mean, Christ, he was governor 35 years ago. Now here he is. You know, Jerry Brown. The best thing Jerry Brown ever did was date Linda Ronstadt when she was still hot. You know, way back when.
See,
and you know, here he is. He's back, and then you got Meg Whitman, who's talking about a new California. And the fact is, there's nothing the governor can do in this state. There's nothing. That the whole structure here is such that the governor has almost, you know, his power is almost nil. So it's just a big joke.
But the good thing about Jerry Brown is the fact that you've already got the protest songs made up from the last time he was governor. So you've still got like California Uber Alice and all that. It's not going to take a lot of work as far as the protest community is concerned to make fun of. They might even have the same signs still.
Yeah, but the thing is, there's already been like two other versions of California Uber Alice.
That was a great tune. But Jerry Brown, I still have a warm spot in my heart for Jerry Brown because when he became mayor of Oakland, one of the first things he started talking about was seceding from the state of California. I thought, Jesus, finally someone's talking about secession, you know? What a great idea. I'm not sure he knew what secession was. But
I would wonder how that would go for Oakland. Would you, like, blow up the Bay Bridge and then put a bunch of cops on the other side and be like, woohoo, we're free, stay away?
A lot of people would like to blow up the Bay Bridge, you know? There'd be a lot of volunteers for that.
Oh, I can believe it. I've never spent so much time sitting on top of water, effectively, as commuting across the Bay Bridge. There's not a lot that happens there between, like, 4 and 7 p.m.
Nope, you're right.
Yeah, well, I guess it would be secession, like, you know, they become their own state or something, that number 51 or what, I don't know. But, all right.
So you secede into a union, or secede into slightly better standing in a union?
Well, seceding from the state of California would be becoming their own state, not their own country, right?
Oh, yeah.
I don't know. I don't know how it works.
It'd be very confusing.
You know, I've always thought, right off the coast here, we've got all these little these little, they're not even islands, you know, they're just little chunks of land that are just sticking out of the water. I live on the central coast of California, and you'll see just a rock sitting out, and it's, I always thought, would it be great just to paddle out there and plant a flag, like a black flag, and declare it, you know, give it your own name, and then call the press, you know, send out a press release and have them all come out, and then you could just expound on your secession theories and your, you know, agorist theories.
I think it would be fantastic, because if they ever sent anybody out to take your flag, you've got a great soapbox to stand on. You can say, wait, you wasted how many dollars to come take down a flag from a rock? And I was sitting here sunbathing, and you just decided to show up, and, you know, you brought, 10 agents to do this, and their hourly salary is this? I mean, you got a good leg to stand on if they ever try to break that up.
Yeah, if I had the energy, I'd do it, but I just don't. If I could monetize it, maybe I would.
All right. Well, we're really glad you came on the show today. Is there anything you want to talk about before we wrap up this segment?
Yeah, I just totally self-serving. I just want to plug my website.
Oh, go ahead.
I want people to understand it's not explicitly libertarian. I think it's implicitly libertarian, because I consider myself a radical libertarian. It's pretty much strictly business. I throw in libertarian stuff occasionally. I've got a post going up about, you know, talking about Big Brother and all that stuff in the next day or so. But there's some freebie stuff on there you can download. If you download the ebook that's there, which talks about, you know, building a small business for yourself by sitting in your butt at Starbucks, you get on my email list, and you get my rants and raves a couple times a week. So that's kind of fun. And the motto of my site, which is wallyconger.com, is smashing wage slavery one job at a time. And I don't know, I would just encourage people to visit the site and try to pursue a more agorist lifestyle.
Great advice.
All right, fantastic. Thanks a lot for being on. This has been a Thinking Liberty interview with Wally Conger. You can check out our other archives at thinkingliberty.net. Wally's got a website, wallyconger.com. And all right, thanks a lot for being on.
Thank you.
Thanks very much, you guys.